All right, everyone. Welcome to episode 5 of Learning to Code. I'm here with our mechanical engineering friend. How you doing?
Very good. How about you?
Good. So last time I kind of threw a lot at you. We built a rocks, paper, scissors game using the command line.
hmm
We looked a little bit into checking if things are in lists and a little bit with control flow.
hmm
But I think something we haven't really touched on too much yet are kind of strings and all the different methods associated with them. So I think for this lesson, we'll just go through some of the really common ways that you can use strings and all the different methods built in. Sound good?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So do you remember how to define strings? Define a
I
variable?
believe so. Variable equals. I know for lists I need the square brackets, but for strings I think it's parentheses.
Quotes.
Quotes.
Yep. So either single or double, whatever you want. All right. Yeah. Let's just do string 1. That's all right. Cool. So now, there you go. So we have our string there, right? And we assigned it to variables. So now whenever you have variable, it's going to reference whatever you assign to it, right?
Yep.
So actually, for this, why don't you take out the 1 there? Just call it string. We're going to do some things with it. So
Sure.
for 1, so that's a lowercase string, right?
hmm
So just a quick function that you can use. I've seen it used a lot for kind of basically if you don't care if somebody inputs an upper or lowercase, so you don't know what they're going to, and you want to check if a string is equal to something. Say they're giving you a name, and you don't know if they're going to give you all uppercase as the name or all lowercase. You can
hmm
do is you can actually. Why don't we just do a print here, and we'll just print it out. We'll see what it does.
Variable.
Yep, and then you're going to do dot upper. And then just make sure you call the method with the 2 parentheses. Yep. So what do you think that does?
It probably calls up all the uppercase letters in variable.
All right, why don't you run it and see what the output gives us there?
Sure.
There you go.
Okay.
So actually, yeah, it'll convert it. Excuse me, it'll convert it over
hmm
to uppercase, so you can kind of do your, maybe if you're checking for if it's valid or stuff like that.
hmm
So the same thing you can do is lower as well. So variable.lower, but because you have a string there and it's the exact same syntax, we can just kind of skip over that for now.
Okay.
So another thing along on the sort of theme of upper or lowercase, you can actually, there's a built-in function to check if something is all uppercase or all lowercase.
hmm
So why don't you just do another print here below that, and then do variable dot is lower. Yep, and then see it auto completes there. There you go. Now, what do you think this is going to return? This is kind of a trick.
I think it's going to say true because we're checking if variable has all lowercase letters, which it does.
And now, what about what you do on line 3 there?
Oh, we convert it, so it's going to print false.
All right, well, why don't you run it? We'll see what happens.
True.
Right, so that dot upper and dot lower are not going to change the variable itself.
Oh, it just prints it.
Well, because you're calling print, it does, but in the case that you're calling it there, it will kind of redefine something that is that you can use that is an upper. Exactly, yeah, I was about to say. So if you did want to actually convert it over, then you do something like that where you reassign.
False.
There you go.
Okay,
but now string is going to be all uppercase.
Now it is,
Makes
but
sense?
if yeah, gotcha. I see.
Yeah, so now it's still the original string because you're just kind of like, if you want to think about it, only on that one call right there is that going to be uppercase. That one line you have there, but it didn't actually change the original.
Yeah.
So that's a really common error that I've seen is, people calling this kind of just like in a line, they'll just say variable.upper, or there's a lot of other methods that kind of have this theme of not actually updating the original. So, it's always a good idea as you go around, you'll learn about like setting breakpoints and things like that in your code, but little things like that can kill you if you write too much code without testing. So always a good idea to run stuff and make sure you get the the output that you're expecting.
Gotcha. Cool.
All right, cool. So now we're going to do a little bit of, I would call it a little bit more advanced. So you can go ahead and remove those prints you have. You can get a little fresh base. So do you remember indexing? We talked about that, I think, a few lessons ago with mostly you talking about lists, but I think we talked a little bit about strings. So why don't you print the R in that variable there using index?
Yeah, so print variable, I think it's a square bracket, and then the R is going to be the 0, 1, 2. It's going to be the 2, I believe. Gotcha.
There you go. All right, now I'm not going to tell you what this does. I'm going to see if you can think of what it does. So next to the 2 inside of your call there, put a colon.
Okay.
Now, just as a guess, what do you think this does?
So I think there was a similar situation in C++, and I think it prints the rest, or I think it prints ing. I think it prints to the right of 2.
All right, try it out. Let's see.
R as well.
Yep. So it'll start at index 2 and print the rest of it.
Cool.
So now, why don't you put how many letters? We got 6 there, right? Why don't you put 6 right there where your cursor is, colon 6. What do you think this is going to output?
It's going to output 2 to 6. I think it's going to include 2, but I'm not sure if it's going to include 6.
Right, so 6 in our case is going to be N, right? Or I'm sorry, put 5 there. My bad. I did not mean to say 6.
5.
Yeah.
Yeah, 5 is G.
All right. So you think it will or won't include G?
I don't know. It's 50-50. Let's say it will. Let's say it will. No.
Doesn't. Yeah. So if you actually remember a really similar thing, they're not similar in how they work, but if you remember the range function, it doesn't include the number that you dictate. Remember we did range?
Yeah.
So if you say like range of 10, it goes 0 to 9. So it's 2 inclusive, but not 5 inclusive.
Cool. Okay.
So yeah, that's called slicing. And because we're going over slicing, why don't you make a list actually at the top there? You can call it like whatever you want.
What do you want here?
Just do a list of numbers, list of integers. I'd make it, just keep going as many as you want. All right, cool. So now instead of variable 2 to 5, why don't you see if it works for, you call it list 8?
Okay, so it should include 76, and then it should do 2, 3, and 4, but not include 5. So I expect it to do 76, -2, -20.
All right, let's see.
Aha.
There you go. Yeah, so the thing to kind of take away here is that strings and lists share much of the same kind of built-in functionalities and also the methods that they have. So chances are, like I said, like if you're thinking in terms of like even just in English, and this slicing thing is a little bit different, but think about like the upper and things like that. Like if you can think of it really quickly, chances are it's in there. So skill that you'll learn as you go across this is looking things up online and going over to a Stack Overflow or something like that, and basically using the Python documentation to your advantage. Because honestly, there's a ton of functions that's already included in the language that you really won't find or use unless you need them. That's just a little tip. But okay,
Gotcha.
One more, slightly more confusing thing. So in list 8 there, why don't you make that as quickly as you can a list of different strings?
Okay.
Write a sentence or something like that. Yeah, you can just redefine it. It's fine. Or, yeah, make a list. That's cool too.
I want a list of strings.
Make it really small. Yeah, that's totally fine. Just really quick. All right, cool. So now, say you're writing a program and you have say there's like a loop, and in that loop, every time the user is inputting a string, right? And you're appending their string to this list. But then when it comes time to use it, all you really wanted to do was collect all these strings and then treat it as a single string. And so, like, basically, how can I convert this list of strings to a string variable?
Didn't we talk about concatenating or something along those lines?
Yeah, so concatenating is two different lists or strings, actually, for that matter. So if you wanted to add list 8 and list 9 together, you could do that.
Okay.
Let's say now I want a new variable called like my string. And I want that to equal, I can't pronounce this because of the letters, but whatever all your strings in list 9 are, if you want all of them to kind of be pushed together.
Yeah.
So
the one way to do it would be just to be like list 9 and then call out 0, then plus list 9, call out 1, and do that all the way to 3.
Yeah, right? No, you could definitely do that. Now, but what if you don't know the length of your list?
Yeah, it's going to take a long time for the longer the list.
It's a little less about how long it would take and more so like you're going to write a for loop. You're going to write a lot of code to do that. But that's probably how this works under the hood, to be honest. But there's actually a built-in function that's pretty cool. So it's called join. So what you want to type, I'll read the syntax for you. Is what are the you want to do 2 quotes. So, yep, and then at the end of that, you're going to go dot join, and then open parenthesis, and then list 9. Yep, and then run that. Or print my string, next line there. And let's run. Yeah, so join is going to take all those, push them together, and now you can use them as a single string. Now what I want you to do is say you cared about your formatting, right? So say in a more real life use case, I should say, you got all these user inputs and you want to format them in a table, or you want to make sure that it's readable. Because right now it's just a bunch of characters. We don't really know like where one of the strings started and one ended, right?
Yeah.
So if you put in that quotation mark, the kind of empty one you have there, why don't you just put maybe like 2 colons or something, anything you want, just so we can do it in some way. So now run it. What do you think's going to happen?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I think I saw the one coming actually.
Yeah, exactly. So this is you can put anything you want in there, and it's a good way to kind of format stuff and make sure you know what's going on. So
yeah, okay.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I gotcha.
So that's a quick little one. And now one more thing. I'm not sure if we went over split. Did we?
I think you might have mentioned it. I'm not sure if we covered it in too great detail.
Variable there. Why don't you change your variable at the top there on line 1 instead of just string? Write do a couple more words. Okay, perfect. So basically what split does, let's just call it, and then maybe you can see, you can guess what it does. So
was it variable.split?
Yep.
Oh yeah, here we go. So self, sep, and max split.
You notice there actually said that it was an optional argument, so why don't you just call it with none? With nothing in there, actually. I shouldn't say none. Just open and close, and print it. That way we can actually get
Yeah?
Yeah, go ahead and run that.
Okay.
So what split does is it'll take your string variable at the top there, and it will split it at whatever you put in those parentheses. So as default argument is basically the delimiter.
Okay.
So why don't you put, let's see what character appears a lot. Why don't you put S in the call to split there? So quote and then S to make sure. Yeah, because it takes in a string there. So why don't you run that? Before you do, though, I'm getting you too quick there.
Yeah.
All right. just looking at the output, what does it look like happened?
Um, it took out like the S in some parts. It's confusing.
Yep. So what's the length of that list?
There's 3.
And then how many S's are there?
2.
Right. So do you know what a delimiter is? What that word means?
No.
So basically what you're saying is S is going to be your delimiter here. So if you want to think of it kind of in a, like as it's generating the output list. So these are called the dot split, and it starts creating a list, right?
Yeah.
And because in dot split it returns a list of strings, the first thing it's going to do is start a string. So that's why if you look at the first one there, you have an empty one.
Yeah.
So it started, and it's saying, when I see an S, I'm going to kind of pop it out and then cut this string and start a new string. So it started it, and the first letter was an S, so it just stopped it immediately. Then it created a new string starting at the T there and went until it saw an S. That's why it's, string I there.
Yeah.
Then it saw the S, so it cut that string, took the S out, started a new string, and then went.
Gotcha. Cool.
So you can put anything in there you want if you have a bunch of wildcard characters that are going to be your delimiter. But yeah, so basically a really great way to use this. I think actually what we're going to make in an upcoming lesson is a client server thing where you kind of little networking. So if you receive a string as input or through a function or something like that, and you want to kind of take action on parts of that string, say they're sending you a math problem. I think we actually used this when we made the calculator. So if they're sending you a math problem and you have to extract the number from the operator and things like that, Split's a great way because you now know how to index lists really well, right?
Yeah.
So then you can extract stuff just using the indexing knowledge that you already know. So it's basically just a way to convert something from a string to a little bit more usable format.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense.
All right, cool. So I think that's going to wrap up our little string introduction. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, so like one lasting question is like, say I did list 1 equals this. Could I store this as a list?
Just store that as a list.
Into list 1.
So you want that to be...
I want that to be this, right? Can you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So right now, why don't you remove the print on line 9 and then just print list 1 below that.
Cool.
Same thing. Yeah, so you can save it for later and use it as you might. So, yeah.
Cool. Awesome.
All right, awesome. Well, that's going to wrap up episode 5, I believe. And so next time, probably go a little bit into dictionaries, and maybe in a future lesson, we'll go over a little bit of the client server, a little bit of networking stuff. So great job.
Thank you.